Hello everyone, and welcome to the next video in the C++ programming course. In this video we are going to be looking at vectors. So what are vectors? Vectors are dynamic data structures, which means that they can grow and shrink as needed when data is added and removed. So if we think back to arrays, if we declared an array of 5, and if we had 5 elements in the array, we can't add any more. But with vectors, it will change. The size of the vector will change according to the data we add and remove from it. So it is dynamic and not immutable. So how can we initialize vectors? If we are not giving any data in the initialization, we can do the first type, which is we write vector, type, and name of vector. But this is the way if we write using namespace std, because the vectors are part of the standard namespace. So if we hadn't written that, we would have had to write std : vector and as continued. And next method is when we want to have data inputted in the initialization. So in that we would write vector and then the type of data in the brackets and the name of the vector equal to, in curly brackets, the items or the elements that we are putting in the data structure. So now how can we add to the vectors? So to do this, we simply write the name of the vector dot pushback, and in brackets we write the data that we want to add to the vector. And how do we access the values? If we think back to how we did it with arrays, we can either use square brackets with the location or the index, or we can write the name of the vector dot at, and in brackets we can write the location or the index. And how can we get the size of the vector? We can just write the name of the vector and dot size. Okay, so now let's look at some examples in Visual Studio Code. Okay, so now let's look at some examples in Visual Studio Code. So if we want to be able to use vectors, before we do any of the initialization, we have to add vectors in the include. So we have to write hashtag include and vector. Okay? This is a requirement if we want to be able to use vectors. Okay, so I've done the basic structure of the C++ program that we've used so far. Hopefully you're familiar with this. Okay, so now let's initialize a vector. Okay, so we are initializing a vector. Okay, and if you are confused what this is just a comment. So if we write 2 forward slashes, anything that is written after it, the program will ignore. So this is just for the programmer to know what we are doing in that bit of code. Okay, so let's initialize the vector. Okay, so to initialize the vector, we write vector, and then in these brackets we write the type of data. So let's first do strings, and then we will write the name of the vector, so we can just put names, and for right now we'll not initialize it. Okay, now that's how we initialize a vector. Okay, now let's initialize another vector, but in this vector we will add data in the initialization. So let's create a vector of integers. So we will write int, and we'll just call it numbers, and we'll write an equals, and we'll put 1, 2, 3. Okay, so now if we look at the size of names and the size of numbers, let's see what happens. Okay, so we write cout names.size, then we will also write numbers.size. Okay, so what we're expecting is for names to return 0 and for numbers to return 1, 2, 3. Okay, so let's run that. Okay, so I'll just get rid of this. Okay, so there we go. This is the first output. So here it says names is 0, and here we can see that numbers is 3. Okay, so now let's add, I'll just write here, getting the size of the vector. Okay, so now let's add the vector. Okay, so first let's add to the names vector. So we'll write names.pushback, and now we can write anything. So I'll just write Bob.